he got a like the first big level of commentary he got came from the Zizekian promotion of him outside of France, right? He had disciples in France, like Meillassoux, Tristan Garcia, people who studied with him, but they weren't the ones who spread his philosophy, right? The first ones, I think, were the Lacanians with the whole discussion on subject. Is Badiou subject the same as Lacan's? Like, that's their issue. Then there was a second, more dedicated field of people, usually with a more Deleuzian kind of tendency, who were more interested in the theory of novelty than on the subject. And they actually had problems with the subject part. So I think that going from Luca Fraser,
Peter Howard, perhaps.
Peter Howard.
Yeah, Peter Howard.
So, and Bustillos, in a sense, like the Marxists are Deleuzians, like both fields, like they took it further.
Yeah, because Peter Howard is not a Deleuzian. His book on Deleuze is highly critical as well. But yeah. More Marxist than Deleuzian.
Yeah, but I think guys who came from politics are from Deleuzian philosophy, like, and either I think they split into the more mathematically minded people who ultimately gave up on Badiou due to a preference for a more computational approach to stuff. And like the whole crew thing, which also had stakes with Badiou, but then let it go. Or the more Marxist guys like Peter Howard, Bruno Bustillos, who went along with it, but at some point they don't use it so much because they think it lacks political economy or something. So I think Gironi's book is a good kind of interesting summary of a guy who was kind of in between the two approaches. He's asking where the materiality is. He's asking what's the relation with analytic philosophy.
With language, yeah. I think it's useful if you want to draw, it's not something to be agreed upon, but it's useful if you want to draw some comparisons to analytic philosophy.
Yeah, I think so too. Like it's very
For
nice.
that it is useful, but
yeah, but it's very much based on this first kind of absorption of Badiou and it's funny that it was kind of a common sense. Lacanians agreed with Deleuzians who agreed with Marxists that Badiou is all about the event and nobody can explain.
Which is bizarre, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it took Badiou like 30 years to let that image go. And I mean, it's true. If you read the stuff and you do some retroactive reading, you see it was never that important formally. But I mean, I even think that Logics of Worlds is kind of also, I mean, it is written once all those people were already working. He already had English translators, commentators. So I think he's also kind of trying to correct them. So perhaps when he answers to Deleuze in the book, as we were talking last time, he's also answering to his Deleuzian commentators a bit, those things, right? So he knows he has mathematically minded commentators in the English world. So he also dwells on that in a different way. So I think those things have a relevance, but it was very much, I would say that two things. It's very much a philosophical reception, meaning even when it's political, it's philosophical. So the Lacanians, the Deleuzians, and the Marxists, they're all like looking for the new philosophy that will kind of birth the new position and not a philosophy that wants to come after politics. So none of them really emphasize that point. Like none of them are really interested in like the nitty gritty of conditions. So I think that also delayed a different absorption, you know, of this project.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I think the best secondary literature stuff I've read on Badiou came from Frank Ruda, although he's from that Hegel Lacan camp as well.
No, I mean, I like his book. I think he has a particular project which is showing that Zizek, Badiou, and Hegel, they're all pretty much connected and things like this. I think he's part of a group that was born out of this tradition of the Lacanian tradition, which is the sort of procrastinators of the event. Like they're all building philosophy while an event doesn't happen, you know? And I find that a bit, I don't know. I think idealists tend to get idealism out of Badiou, you know, like that's what you get.
Yeah, that's a good formulation. Idealism gets idealism, but this is quite general as well, because what would idealism get out of anything,
Yeah, I
But
mean, if philosophy is supposed to say something new and then change the world, yeah, we're probably gonna be left waiting anyway. So I don't know. But I think Girone's book is interesting. Definitely one of the most serious attempts to engage. But I find it like dealing mostly with this scarecrow, and doesn't make an effort to distinguish like Badiou's very Platonic rhetoric from, let's say, the meat of the concepts, which I think was a
Yeah, but I think this is quite general, right? I mean, everything I read, secondary literature, they are very, very, very much caught up in the rhetoric. This is
Yeah.
Yeah.
almost.
I heard
Yeah.
that there's a book coming out soon by a guy we know, who's a very good general overview of Badiou's project. Reza knows something about it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I haven't received any. Hi guys, by the way, it's good to see you
So
guys. I was
you were being
patiently
talked
listening.
about.
I haven't received any comments from Yelitsa. I expected comments last week, but I haven't received them.
So I'm really anxious to see what she will say.
Yeah.
Should we start?
Yeah.
Let's get to it. I think I'm already recording as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so we only have a few slides left, and then I didn't really prepare that much, but I think because we covered so much, and then this is also the end of the analytic portion of the book, that I think the rest of the time we could spend just discussing any points that weren't clear, or maybe already anticipating how this stuff is going to be used later on in the book, because as complicated and as technical as this part of the book is, it's really not the main thing, right? For Badiou, Badiou always throws a lot of crazy stuff at you early on, but then really the point is, how do we formulate novelty, change, or experimentation? It's one of the things we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
How do we formulate those things in light of the analytic portion? That's the meat or the important thing in Badiou, right? It's going to be different than other philosophers because of the constraints, the system of constraints that Badiou has put forward. So I think it would be very productive for us to talk about those kinds of things, right? More philosophical imagination of what change is, which will be the topic of the next book anyway. So yeah, I mean, one thing I wanted to point out, again, going back to technical discussions, is I think the formalism that Badiou introduces for relations is a bit too restrictive, and I don't know why, right? I think that's an open question for me, specifically on this one point, where this condition here, the first condition of a relation, which is that the existence must be exactly the same, existence of rho of A must be existence of A. I feel like this is a overly restrictive condition because, and I'll tell you why, because from this formalism that I'm using with the m by m square matrices, this tells us all the information that an object has, right? And it must always be a square matrix because identity is symmetric. So for any two elements, there must be some identity, whether that's maximal or minimal or somewhere in between. So we always have a square matrix, and the relation always takes us to another square matrix, right? Because they're both objects. So, but the problem with saying that the existence must always be exactly the same or preserved is that we're not allowed to map a square matrix of size m to a smaller size n square matrix because I cannot map two atoms here, like A and B, for example. I can't map them to the same atom in the codomain simply because the existences are different, right? This A is identical to itself on the level 1. B is identical to itself at the level 4 over 5. And this, my complaint here is just that it doesn't allow for injective relations or non-injective relations, sorry. And I think that's a bit restrictive. So that's kind of a side comment that I wanted to make, but I don't know what you guys think about that.
But why do you say, I mean, yes, my first impression is to agree with you that conserving existence means that the matrix needs to, I mean, if you exist separately from something else, then you need to continue to exist separately. But wouldn't it be the case that if you exist maximally and something else I mean, isn't it in a certain sense, if two different atoms are mapped onto one that has the same value, weren't their existence preserved? Like their identities were increased, but they exist. So my point, like if their identities were became maximal.
Yeah, the identities cannot be maximal because the identities can only go up to their existence, right?
Does it say that though?
Yeah, that's one of the rules, not in this section, but in general for atoms, the identity of an atom with another atom cannot be greater than the lower of their existences. So if I have an atom A and the existence of A is, let's say, 1/2, and I have an atom B and the existence of B is 1/4, then the identity of A and B must be less than 1/4, right? And this is okay. But I'm just saying that if I had an A and a B on this side, this is an object, let's say, and I have another. So for one, this means that non-injective means I won't be able to do this. I can't map these two atoms to a single atom. Why? Because this single atom must have an existence that is, if I choose 1/2, then the 1/4 existence cannot be mapped to it.
Well, you can map it, but it is not a relation in Badiou's sense.
Exactly.
It does not appear as a relation.
It does not appear as a relation. And this is a problem because it means if I have an object with two atoms and an object with one atom, under Badiou's scheme, there's no relation between them, which seems very restrictive and I don't understand why. Yeah.
But I'm having a hard time. Like if you go back to your matrices, the second one,
yeah, do you see how the diagonal is the same on both?
Yeah. But the second one is, I mean, I'm just trying to understand because the matrix, the relation is a function.
Existence is the diagonal one.
Existence is the diagonal.
Yeah, but the function, the relation is a function between two support sets, right? Of objects.
Yeah.
So Dennis, do you mean that since because of this condition, the relation has to be injective, then Badiou is assuming that all the multiples that support relations are multiples with the same cardinality?
I think it could be greater. So the codomain can have a support set that has more stuff, but it couldn't have less stuff. And that seems to be a problem.
Right. Yeah, codomain can be more, but not less.
Yeah. Yeah, and when we talked about morphism, we talked about this one type of morphism, which is the monotonic condition, right? And this seems to be a more natural type of morphism because it respects ordering, so you can never map like you can never do something like this where you map the top element down here and then map these elements up here, right? That's what monotonic precludes. It precludes this swapping of ordering. However, it does allow for a non-injective mapping insofar as you can do everything can get mapped to one thing, right? Because the less than or equal to is reflexive. So this is A is less than or equal to A, and then all of the, so that in a trivial sense, it will be satisfied that all the less than or equal to relations will be satisfied here. And what I think Badu should have done, or what makes more sense to me, is that you have something like that relation with atoms, where it is possible to map like 5 atoms to one atom, as long as I don't know, maybe that one atom has existence greater than or equal to the ones on the left, something like that. Because yeah.
I mean, I don't think that it speaks. I have to take back my comment. It really has to do with the value. So if the codomain has one element and the domain has 5 elements, but it happens that the existence of all 5 elements is the same, and the codomain has the same degree of existence, they are all P, then Badiou's condition will satisfy, right?
So you're saying in a case where the codomain has 5 elements, and they
no,
all
the
have
codomain has just one element. Codomain has one
Right.
element, and it is the degree of existence is P, and domain has 5 elements with the degree of existence P.
Oh, okay.
But I don't understand,
Yes.
like, what guarantees that I mean, why is it that, let's say that the element in B, in the codomain, right? You only have one element. Sorry, let me see something here.
So in this case, you're satisfying the first condition, right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. If we had atoms that each had the same existences, yeah. But so yeah, it still is. It's less of a problem there. But still, in the case where you have, let's formulate it this way: the number of unique existences in the domain, the number of unique existences determines what relations you can have on the codomain.
Because from the beginning, when he was defining relation, he was saying that relation does not create difference or existence.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, so the question is, so it cannot create a difference that did not exist.
Yeah, that's this. That's P8 here.
Right.
So you're allowed to increase identity. You cannot decrease identity, or also known as you cannot increase difference, right?
You cannot increase difference, and you cannot decrease identity.
Yes, and that's okay. That's like the monotonic condition that we talked about here with this would be like that, right? A monotonic condition. You're never decreasing identity, but still you're allowed to collapse
Yeah.
your elements here.
But in case of but you can collapse too.
Yeah, that's
Only to a certain point. You can't collapse beyond the number of unique existences. So if I have 5 unique existences,
I see.
I cannot have a relation with an atom with an object with only 1 unique existence.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is true.
So there's kind of a limitation to this relation thing. But yeah, I don't know what, you know, it's not a huge deal.
Yeah, I think it's the impression that I have is that this is really, I think this is a crucial point, but I have the impression that since he works all the time from the supposition that we're always dealing with infinite multiples, I mean, those sort of problems of cardinality of the finite don't really play that big a part, right? I mean,
yeah, that's true.
I mean, I that's the reasoning I imagine that he would be making, like, that's, but still, it at least is an interesting condition, even if that doesn't get in the way, the idea that you require that the infinite cardinality of one object be at least a proper part of the other object, right? Even if they're both infinite.
Yeah, the problem disappears, I think, if we assume all objects have infinite number of atoms. Because you'll always be able to find an atom with the existence you need, right? Something like
well, you need an additional condition. It's not an infinite number of atoms, it's infinite number of distinct identity.
Yeah, distinct existences.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need an infinite number of distinct existences, which is, you know, because this also means that in a lot of ways, you have non-symmetric relations, because if we look at the case where A has 1 element and B has 2 elements, you may be able to find a relation from A to B, but you cannot do a relation from B to A if these two are unique. So relations become, I mean, you can have a one-way relation. So B doesn't have any relation to A. A has a relation to B. That's another downside of this.
Say it again, sorry?
A can have a relation to B.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
B cannot have a relation to A, because again, B has more atoms than A, unique.
But now, I mean, there is another reason why we should consider this always as infinite multiples, because I think that if it's not infinite, you don't have inexistence of every object, no? Isn't the inexistence also kind of
inexistence is just this. For any square matrix, you must have one that has zeros in all entries.
Yeah.
So C is the inexistent here.
Yeah, but
although I didn't add that anywhere else, but
yeah, but isn't that guaranteed? Because you can come up with a matrix that doesn't have that. I mean, I have the impression that is affirmed via, let me just see here. When he says,
yeah, that's what you're saying is true. So basically what we are saying is the number of distinct identities of existence cannot be greater than the number of distinct existences of the codomain.
Exactly.
If there were, so if we say EX equal to E of rho X, in this case will not work, because there will be at least one atom with a distinct existence in the domain that cannot be mapped to an equal existence in the codomain.
Yeah, exactly. It won't find a home in the codomain because it needs the existence to be the same. And I encountered this when I was trying to come up with examples, because I wanted to show like injective and surjective and all the different combinations of morphisms that we talked about in the category theory portion. But yeah, I cannot come up with a non-injective case because of this, unless Reza's example where like two atoms have the same existence. Yes, then it can be non-injective. But if it has unique existences, then no.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to be very relevant, the fact that this whole discussion on relations is also on the chapter on the inaccessible infinite cardinality of worlds, right? I mean, it's kind of embedded in a discussion on infinity, right?
Yeah.
That is not a discussion on the infinity of objects, right? It's important.
Yeah, he never says. I read the inaccessible stuff to be that you have the full capacity of set theory available to you.
Yeah.
You can take power sets and be assured that there will be a set, support set that will help you there. Yeah.
Yeah, objects can be composed out of the components of an object, and the collection of objects can itself be an object, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of an addendum to the atomic logic in the sense that we're not talking about, okay, the atoms are built in this way, objects are like this. Now you have a bunch of objects. Like, it's not a matter of the size of the world is the size of the stuff of the world, not of the object of the world, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that in that sense, it would make sense to think that when we talk about multiples and objects, we're talking about infinite multiplicities, not finite ones.
So what we are saying is that if you come back, the conceptual definition of a relation, the negative definition of a relation conceptually was that a relation is a connection that cannot decrease identity and cannot increase difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we are saying is that that is okay because that fits into monomorphic relation, whereas the formal definition, so the conceptual definition is okay, but the formal definition by the way of showing E of rho A equal to EA is basically smuggling an additional condition that the conceptual condition didn't have.
I mean, I'm not sure the distinction between conceptual formal is that strong because he also, outside of the formal, he says conserves existences or like, but it could also be a less than equal to here instead of an equal. So
yeah, but I mean, my point is that were you talking about infinite matrices in your own choice of formalism?
Yeah, exactly. I
think the finitist presupposition is brought by your example.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, this could be infinite, but obviously I cannot show an infinite n by n, infinity by infinity matrix here.
Yeah, but the number of atoms do not matter. And what matters is the number of distinct degrees of existence. That is what matters.
Yeah, but they're linked together.
They're linked together.
Atom, if you want an infinite number of unique existences, you need an infinite number of atoms.
Yes, but not the other way around. Right? You can have infinite number of atoms without infinite number of distinct existences.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, but I have the impression that that's where the preliminary solution comes from. Like, part of the problem is dissolved by that. On the other hand, I like the idea that for Badiou, if there are boring relations in the world, it's because the world is infinite.
Right.
I like that sort of the mediocre corollary. Like, if you can say that relations, I mean, it's a weird kind of retort to Deleuze, where infinity means exciting creativity, right? and relationality. For Badiou, it's like, okay, things can relate in a conservative way. That's a consequence of things being infinite. There were finite that wouldn't hold, right? So
if we, Dennis, if we changed EA equal to E rho A to E rho A greater than or equal EA, would that solve the problem?
Yeah.
yeah,
Then it would just
increase.
become, then it would just become a monotonic relation, like
Right.
in the sense of the.
As a matter of fact, because his conceptual condition is not equal, is increase or decrease. It says that it cannot decrease identity.
Oh yeah, that's one of them. That's
Yeah, but
one
he
of them.
says explicitly conserve existence.
Yeah.
But
it's
why? Why would
equal.
it?
Yeah, he doesn't give a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should always distinguish this, because it's not a matter of saying that this sort of process is not possible. It's just that it falls under something else, like it falls under the object logic, not relation logic, right? It is definitely possible for things to be congealed into one atom rather than two. But then you didn't really, let's say, relate them externally. You related them in that more intrinsic way we were talking about. So this theory doesn't prevent you from doing that. But if it did change that, then it gets it falls under a different operation, right? So
and there is nothing in like if you wanted to. You're right. I mean, basically what he's saying is that you can have all different sorts of connection between two objects, but those connections do not appear in the world as a relation. So for him, relation is a very specific category of connections which satisfy these two conditions. But is there a formal name, like a mathematical name for this kind of morphism?
Yeah, I mean, there are pre-orders. No, not pre-order, sorry, skeletal. There's a certain category where at most there can be one arrow and it's non-symmetric. But then it starts to look like a partial order set as a category. But yeah, I mean, we can look around for a mathematical thing. It just doesn't. It's not a standard category though. It would be something unique. And yeah, I just couldn't find a conceptual reason why we did that. But of course, there's a way around it by exactly what Gabriel's saying. We can just say, okay, the interesting relations we still have a place for them within the object. So we just shift our perspective and say, oh, A and B are actually two elements within a larger object, and that now we can have all the richness of like
yeah, because I mean, I think that I think that we should take more, like, we should invert a bit more our regular, contemporary philosophy outlook, which is all about the richness of relations, and try to see it the other way. Like, you already have a theory of the fact that, some cells of a cat can be an object, with a whole bunch of interesting consequences of taking that as your cover, right? Mm-hmm. You can talk about the cat, which includes the cells, as being an object. You can talk about, the living room with the cat inside as being an object. You can talk. So you have this mereological approach that is very sophisticated, but you don't. It's way too rich, because we don't have the means to talk about the cat is in the roof. Like, how do you say this? Like, got subir o telhado. The cat is just like, the book is on the table. Like, we know how to speak about the constitution of the table as a table, but we don't know how to say the book is on the table. So you want a restricted version. The conservative aspect is not a weakness, is the thing itself. Like, that's what we want to find. Like, we know how to compose the world, but we want to know how to talk about things together while not composing each other in a new way, right? Not interfering in their existence, which is, I mean, that's the thing he's saying is universally exposed, right? It's a very restricted sort of coherence, which is weird because you don't want to say that things cohere as a grand object. The world is a big object. You want to be able to say, given some level of composition, these things belong to the same world. They are related, right? So that relation needs to be weak. Otherwise, it would be just a big object. And you can have all sorts of transformations when you consider things as big objects, right? For example, the planet Earth is a big object. We're all in it. There is a transformation from all these separate objects into it, where all the singularity disappears, and we're like irrelevant as, you know, objects or parts of it, compared with the big mass of water, atmosphere, and so on and so forth. And that's fine. You can do that, right? You already have the machinery to talk about that sort of transformation where large parts become small parts, a lot of difference becomes unified. You can do all of that. What we don't have yet is a way to talk about, you know, human beings are in the world. Like, what sort of conservative composition is that, right? So I think that's weird because nobody's interested in that, because that's, let's say, the poor man's phenomenology, right? Everyone is interested in, oh, but your relation to the groundness transforms beings into earthlings or whatever. Like, what about the boring relation? Like, how do you, so I do think it makes sense to me to treat this as a sort of added thing where you're looking for the most restricted version as an additional thing, because you already have all the transformative ones. And you want to do it, I mean, it may also make sense that you wouldn't find it anywhere, because it is about conservation. It's not about, let's say, increasing our understanding or showing the interconnection, right?
Yeah, so that this leads us to the actual diagrams that he's going to so yeah, I want to consider this because so just a backstory here is that there's a in Quebec there was a I think they were trying to build a golf course or something on indigenous lands, the Mohawk Indians, and then there was this incident there. So the fight between the indigenous peoples there that wanted to stop this building of this golf course, and then the administration of the city, right? And so Badiou develops this whole network of relations in a categorical way, and so here we're saying that every one of the objects in this diagram, every one of the points in this diagram must be infinite. I mean,
yeah,
that's the only way this would work, right? Because we can't have, so normally we would say, well, a single citizen
can only support.
Yeah, the cardinality, the support set of a single citizen should be less than, let's say, the cardinality of the support set of the Mohawks, and this Quebecois.
Say it again. I got distracted. What did you say? Like about?
Yeah, I'm just saying that this condition we're talking about of weak relations and the cardinality being the same. Can we map this onto this example that Badiou gives us? Because I guess we can if we assume everything has infinite cardinality here. Right.
Yeah, also?
Because just like we said with this.
But look, can't you just, I mean, before you, I mean, my point is the following. For example, just think of the example, think of a regular example. Let's say you're a Quebecois citizen and you're angry at the Quebecois administration. Like, the object at which you're angry is not the Quebecois administration in the sense of a lot of discrete people that you can discern between them, and you know all their names, and you can differentiate them and predicate on their difference, right? It's already, let's say, this big compound of a thing, mainly associated with a flag, a territory. So you can imagine, let's say, an internal transformation of the object prior to the relation, if you want. Though a Quebecois citizen can be angry at a person, he can also be angry at this sort of unified object, right? The relation will not unify the object. So it's not the transformation itself, it's not vituperation that will make the Quebecois administration into a one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you can assume that you can treat the Quebecois administration by its envelope, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine prior transformations, prior compositions that make the Quebecois administration into a one thing rather than a bunch of things. And I don't think that it comes into, like, relations are not, they come so late in the game that the question of the size of the support set being infinite, it's already plastic at the level of the atomic logic if you will treat it as a bunch of discrete instances of the administration as one. That is given by the object itself, right?
Yeah.
It seems it comes too late for it to pose a mereological problem, which is supposed to be already solved in the object and in the transcendental sessions, and it comes too early to solve the problem of relationships that make things change, because this will be the object of the next chapters.
Yeah.
So it's both too early and too late. So relations is actually not what we expected it to be in Badiou.
Yeah.
It's much less than I think it's much less than we normally expect to be.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah. I mean, just this, I'm trying to draw out more. I'm trying to figure out, besides saying, oh, these relations are everything that's left over, right? That's what we're.
Yeah, no, you want to be able to say more than simply, this is the remainder of the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what it feels. It feels like, oh, so everything that's not important, everything that's ineffective, let's just put it in this category. So support, but does that mean support is really a non-effective relation? Like if I support a movement.
Yeah, thank God, finally we can say it out loud. Supporting a movement is not being part of a movement.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I'm so happy.
So this is like the Quebecois citizen is clicking like on a Facebook post that
it's less than clicking like.
We're posting a very fierce political demand on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I totally agree with you though, Dennis. Like, we need to have a positive conception of what ineffectivity means, right? We shouldn't have a negative one, like, well, we're doing this doesn't seem to do much. But seems that not doing much is prescriptive, like it is the concept, right?
Yeah.
We should be able to say more than this, right? I think he gives us a clue of what as Caron says very well, like we saw the kind of transformative, ontological or logical transformativity at the atomic level, right? To the sort of non-subjective participation, which is compositionality, mereology, objects that become larger objects, different objects. We know that this doesn't go into any, let's say, radical change, but it's, let's say, the intrinsic variation of the world, right? Mm-hmm. And we will get transformations later on with events and so on. So
because I mean, with relation, I think one example that comes to mind all the time is, for instance, in chemical relations, for instance, you mix one element with another, and then you have a third element. But this is not the object, the actual object of the chapter on relations, of Badiou's chapter on relations.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that this
think-
is important. It's almost like his
the
theory of
Deleuzean concept
ideology.
relation will be something akin to something like that. You know, there's some differentials there that make up a different object when you mix them together, when they come into an encounter, so to speak the Deleuzean jargon. But this is not what Badiou means with relations at all.
I almost think that he has a theory of ideology here. Like, you know, how do you map the global coherence of a world that is not going to be changed by that mapping, right? So, I mean, and he gives us a hint that is very important, and it's very amazing that this is so cogent with that treatment, which is like this, you know, the whole thing with modern physics of, you know, when you want to understand something, you geometrize it, right? Like you take something which look like an external relation between stuff, and you find out that there's actually, let's say, deformation in space, some sort of kind of the two things, they co-produce themselves, things like this. This move from this external to the internal, it is very much the move from, let's say, this sort of extrinsic to a more actual understanding of something, right? For example, we could call this, let's say, an observation in the naive sense versus experimentation in the proper sense, right? Something like this. So I think we should take this not as as you said, I think totally right, not as this is what's left, but it is quite telling that it takes such a precise theory of objects to separate as a separate concept the sort of ineffective relation, right? Which is kind of lost in theories of absolute variation and novelty and everything is creation. You never get a chance to talk about ineffectivity. Everything seems defective, right? So, but you actually,
I mean, the point or the power of category theory is a bit, it's given a kind of a weaker interpretation here because, well, it's not necessarily weaker. I mean, there's something interesting, which is he does give you this idea of composition of relations and then this globally exposed idea. So there are things you can do with relations.
Yeah.
Still, you know, they're not totally they're able to be submitted to a certain logical thinking, which I think it'd be useful to explore, even though it doesn't change the objects. And that's what these two diagrams show us with the cone and the limit, right? This is what is described in this last picture here. So let's maybe talk through this because maybe will clarify the role of these relations. So recall that we talked about limits as being a kind of a special arrow or a special set of arrows from a specific privileged object to another set of objects and arrows. And more formally, we can say that both of these are functors. C and A are both functors on some category. So let's say we have a category called D, which is the diagram category, and then we have two different functors onto some category C. One of the functors is called the constant functor, which just maps everything in the diagram to a single object, which I will illustrate like this. Okay. So whatever the diagram category, it's just a picture. So it can look like this, for example. Right, something like this would be a diagram category. Right. So the constant functor takes the diagram and maps it to a single object. The other functor is an image of the diagram. So in this case, we call it A. Right? And A basically, like any functor, takes every object from the diagram and maps it to an element or an object of the category C. So what this ends up looking like is we have a picture of this diagram inside of C, and we have a privileged object that sees everything like this, right? So there's
In this
arrows.
Case, this C is the C that sees everything is an object within category C.
Yes. Sorry, let me maybe add this here. So, and then say, you know, C is in C. Right. So yeah, so in general, functors are a way of like drawing categories inside other categories, right? So it makes sense then. These two functors are like two different pictures of D inside C. And these two functors have a special relationship, which is specified by the by these FJ arrows here. These FJs are actually natural transformations. So if you recall from the interlude, a natural transformation is just a way of turning a functor, one functor into another functor within the context of their common codomain. So I have a functor, let's say I have a functor F from C to D, and then I have another functor G from C to D. So let me clear this. Maybe this is right. So a natural transformation can be written like this, right? It takes the picture of F and it turns it into the picture of G, but it does this by point-wise for every object that was mapped in one functor. It picks out a morphism that maps that object to the object in the other functor. Actually, that's what these are here. These F of J, F of K. These are components of the natural transformation, and C and A are the two functors. Okay, that's the formal treatment here. Branching it off here. Okay, so then it makes sense that F and J are natural transformations. Okay, so the point of this is that C can see everything that A has mapped into our category.
Mm-hmm.
And this is called a cone. It's a special object with natural transformations into the diagram. And the limit of a cone is just another cone that is, let's say, the closest cone to the actual diagram. It is the cone where if I were to find any other cone for this diagram, it would have to factor uniquely through the limit. So there can be many cones, but one of the cones is the limit, right? It's the one that's contains the most information for this diagram. Okay, so with that kind of very abstract definition, we can interpret this relation, these sets of relations as, so exponent 1 is a cone. Badiou's name for cone is exponent. And we have 2 of these, and then the unique relation goes from exponent 2 to exponent 1, meaning exponent 1 is the limit. And when that's the case, Badiou calls it a universally exposed relation. sorry, this is the universally exposed relation, the one at the bottom here. The exponent 1 is the limit that, in some sense, stands for its status as universally exposed. And so the question here is, yes, relations don't change the objects that are in question here, but there are, let's say, relations that are privileged. And actually, my interpretation right now, thinking of this, is that we know that the limit of a relation that only has one arrow in this way. So we said before that there's these diagram categories, right? Diagram categories are just categories that have some set of arrows and morphisms. So D is a diagram category. And let's say the diagram category has this only 2 objects and 1 arrow. That's our diagram category. Then we have a functor from this to some other category. I'll call this a different letter. Let's say let's say Z is our category, other category, right? So we know that a cone for Z, a cone for this functor will look like this. It'll be a privileged object, C, which sees a specific incarnation of D. Remember that, yeah, there are actually 2 functors going on here, right? There's the functor that takes this here and takes this here and takes this here. Okay, that's a functor.
Yeah.
And then there's another functor which maps everything to one object. So it maps this, this, and this here. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just pick a color that makes sense here. And then these are the white arrows are the natural transformation. Okay, so you have 2 functors, a red functor and a green functor, and the white arrows are the natural transformation. This satisfies the definition of a cone. So we know in category theory, actually, when you have this situation, the limit of this cone is actually isomorphic to the domain, right? There's an isomorphism on this side. So my interpretation of this is to say that when you have a relation like this, the limit of your support for the Mohawk ends with being part of the Mohawks themselves. You have to be isomorphic to the Mohawks to be a limit for this relation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting, yeah.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, so yeah, you may start out, it is true that a person clicking like on a Facebook post has some relation, but it's a very far away relation, right? It's a cone, but it's nowhere near the limit for that relation. The only way you reach the limit of this is if you are isomorphic to the Mohawks themselves.
And in your drawing, what does it mean for the limit to be isomorphic to that object?
Yeah, so the way Badiou actually describes it is, so isomorphic means there's a bijective function, right? There's a bijective transformation so you don't lose any information, right? So if A and B are isomorphic, that means, and you have some function f And F,
ultimately, then looking at C, you get all the information you would get at looking at
No,
the
I
domain.
understand what the meaning of isomorphic is, but for a limit to be a limit, it doesn't have to be isomorphic to the objects that it sees. Or you're saying it has to be.
a limit in this sense, a limit of a diagram of one arrow is isomorphic to the domain of the arrow. This is something that Badu doesn't say, but I had to research this, and it actually makes sense because in a post set.
So there must be if you name those two green dots, like name them something, alpha, beta, or whatever. So you're saying there is an arrow from alpha to C.
Yeah, the arrow from alpha to C is the inverse of the arrow from C to alpha, and
which makes them isomorphic.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is a condition for transformation of a category diagram through a functor to another category. You said,
not for every cone. So there's other limits, right, that are more complicated. So like the classic one is, let's say the diagram is just two objects. There's no arrows between them. Then the cone is something that looks like this. Right, compare this to this. So again, we have a constant functor, which maps both of these to this one. But then we also have the green functor, which maps this to this and this to this.
So you're saying in this case, the cone is not isomorphic to one of the objects, alpha?
Yeah. Yeah, this is actually the product of the two objects. So if this was A and B, this would be A times B, which is not necessarily isomorphic. It's all ordered pairs.
Yeah, I'm trying to still figure out why they have to be isomorphic. Can you flip back to the diagram? To the other one?
Yeah, this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we can say intuitively this way. In a post set, we have this situation, right? Like, it's possible to have the intersection of A and B. There's A and B here, and then this is the intersection of A and B. So we can say that the limit. My mouse is breaking. So yeah, the limit of A and B is A intersect with B, or A conjunction B, right? But imagine a case where you had one arrow only here. This is B, and this is A. What is the conjunction here? It's just A. I mean, the name for this is just A. Right, so then just rotate this image. Rotate this image, and you'll see that it looks like this. Right, whereas if we rotate this image, we get the other example here. Of the product. Yeah, that's this one here. It looks like a post set, and A times B is the, plays the role of the conjunction. Yeah, but in other words, it says that the information that best captures this relation is isomorphic to the domain, whereas the information that you need to capture this relation, which is a non-relation between A and B, is the set of all ordered pairs. where the first element comes from A and the second element comes from B. If we're talking about sets. So if A contained 1, 2, and B contained A, B, C, right? We'd have 6 elements in A times B. We'd have 1A, 1B, and so on, and then 2A, right, and so on. Here, though, if we had, again, alpha here had 1, 2, and B had A, B, C, you wouldn't have all ordered pairs. You would have specifically those ordered pairs that are in this relation. So why is that? Because a function, a set function, can't map 1 to more than one thing, right? This is not allowed. So I can't map 1 to A and B. I can map 1 to A and 2 to B, or I can map 1 to A, 2 to C, and so on, right? There's different, right? So this arrow actually limits
the possibilities.
The possibilities. It limits the possibilities, yeah. And so this informationally, this limit here, the C, is like a subset of the product A times B. And in fact, you can see that whatever amount of information C has, it's limited by the domain, not by the codomain, because codomain actually, B could be infinite.
Yeah.
Right, D, E, all the way.
Yeah, oh, by the way, on page 339, he says explicit that everything we're dealing with is infinite.
Oh, he says it.
Yeah, in the last kind of summary of right before the second fundamental thesis of materialism, just before he kind of formally presents it, he says it that a world is ultimately a system of objects and relations which makes an infinite collection of pure multiples appear, prescribed, blah, blah. He talks about infinity there, like. But like I'm getting the sense that to extract the best out of this chapter, we need to formulate what we want from it. Also, I mean, as Caron said, like remove some wrong assumptions out of the way, and then formulate the question in the best way. And I'm starting to think like the interesting problems are of the sort. In some sense, I have no relation. Let's say, in which sense I, as a person, can have a relation to France as a country. It's different of the sense in which Brazil can have a relation to France. Like, it seems that the objects constrain. What is the level?
Is it only me, or your voice is choppy?
Is my voice choppy?
Yeah. Is it only me, or?
Yeah, Gabriel's voice is chopping a little bit. Yes.
A little bit.
Sorry, let me see if I can make it better. Just 1 second. Is it better now?
Well, you have to talk.
I'm talking.
Yeah, it's working,
I think. Is it working?
Yeah, it is better.
Okay. No, my point is that I feel like the two big topics of this chapter are this idea of universal exposition, which is weirdly enough never appearing as a concept for us. Like, it seems like the important thing is relation and not the fact that relations are universally exposed. But that seems to be what he wants to prove, right? The thesis of materialism of this chapter is that if worlds are, it's this triad that I'm still a bit unclear about, like inaccessible cardinality of the world, logical completeness of a world, all relations are universally exposed. Like these three things seem to follow from, he suggests that he's deducing them one from the other, right? Mm-hmm.
Now you're choppy again.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, maybe turn off your video. I don't know.
Yeah, let me see if that helps. Does it help?
Yeah.
I think it's helping.
Yeah, okay. Like he gives us these three big statements.
It's not helping.
No?
No.
Okay, I'll leave and join in 1 second. I can't leave. Fuck, let me just do something else instead.
Yeah, but most of the time I can hear you. I mean, it just every once in a while it cuts out. It's fine.
Yeah, let me just see if something works here.
Yeah, but yeah, this idea of, let's say, a country versus you, like.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be. Sorry, I might have solved the problem. Just one second.
I'll just write stuff while you're draw some stuff while you're.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aha.
Now I hear two of you though. You may have to mute the other.
Yeah.
Trying to work my way. Can you hear me okay?
You duplicated yourself.
Yes. For absolutely no reason. So my point is, there seems to be, like, it seems to me that there are two big topics in this chapter. The first big topic is how relations are constrained by object relations. Like, depending on how objects are composed, you get some relations, you don't get others, right? Relations don't get to say what they relate. Objects get to say, right? So it's the sort of the weak version, the discussion on the conservative aspect and things like this. But there seems to be a different trend in the chapter which concerns that triad of statements, which is inaccessible cardinality of the world begets its logical completeness. You can derive from it that relations are universally exposed, right?
Yeah.
And it's the issue of completeness and universality of intra-worldly relations. That's the main topic.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to see what sort of question explores the problem, right? And it seems that one of the ways to think about this is that the fact that relations are universally exposed doesn't mean that all connections are related. I am connected to friends. For example, I'm not a citizen of France. That's a connection. Or I might be in France. I'm localized by France. That's an atomic object compositional problem. But am I related to France? Like, I don't think I am, like, in this particular sense here. So certain objects have relations to other objects, but other, let's say, petty object itself might have relation. You see my point? Like, I think that's a concept, this conceptual approach. Like, by the definition of how you compose objects and the fact that this is what determines relationality to a specific sense, you like to have a relation exposed, right? You need to consider certain objects rather than others, right? Universally exposed relations doesn't mean all connections are there like this. So I'm wondering the sort of that might be interesting at this part of the text, right? Consider in terms of, like, let's use connection as the vague, undefined terms. Then you have object relations of mereology and composition, and relations proper, right? So, for example, French is not related to France. It composes France, right? It's part of France. Whereas we want, for the question of now proper relations in Badiou's sense, I could ask, Brazil has a relation to France because you can own that relation, right? Whereas I don't think you can do the same for me in my connection to France. You see my point? Like, this would suggest that what we're seeing in this chapter is a sort of theory of normal spheres, normal strata. Like, when you arrive at a certain level of analysis, relations are ineffective because all object compositions are already defined.
Mm-hmm.
So at that level, let's say the relation between Brazil, France, England, United States, like, that's a relation in the sense that it's not changing the things related, but you only get to see the picture of the world. I mean, that's my point ultimately. Like, isn't this the point where we get pictures of the world, right?
In a sense, it's like a theory of the composability of objects within
Yeah.
a world.
So, but not all, and that's what I find interesting. Like, it means that not all objects are compatible or
Yes,
composable.
yes.
Right?
Possible.
Sure.
I'm not using compatible because compatibility.
Yeah, because it's
technical.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that there is actually a very strong. I mean, I'm not sure if what I'm saying makes sense. Like this example, right? As a person connected to a country, would that defines a religion, right? Or even if, since relations are constrained by objects, you won't get relations between certain objects, certain, I wouldn't say types of objects, perhaps, right? In this case, like nations.
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually, I think you
similar
should go back to the your audio started cutting off.
The audio is worse a little bit.
Yeah, it got worse.
The world is okay, but now I have two solutions. Let me see.
Yeah, but I see your point. It's there's
Is it
different
better now?
types. Yes, it sounds better.
Yeah, it's like
So Gabriel, can you explain your example again? I couldn't get it. Like you're saying that your relationship, or Dennis, maybe you can recapitulate what he said.
It's just that there's a relation between you and France and a relationship between Brazil and France that are of different types, and depending on the scale you choose, one of those is inoperative and the other one isn't, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be even strong. It can be put even stronger in what I feel I'm reading here. It's like the relationship between you and France is not a relationship.
Oh, you have a cat.
Yeah, the cat is going through the window, man.
Yeah, but the window has
Yeah,
has
just saying. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's normal. They
No, okay.
are there.
Yeah, I'm trying to distinguish three
The
positions.
atom is trying to get out of the object.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to distinguish three things, like what we call composition,
Yeah,
which is atomic. It concerns objects.
and it's not a relation.
It's not a relation. Then what I'm calling connection, which is like just a vague term. We don't know what it means. Okay, just so we can talk about stuff. And then relation proper. And relation here has this property, right?
Relation
is a
is
strictly
there's some
different
externality.
objects.
There's some externalities relation, so it can't be composition.
Yeah.
First
And then we
thing.
know, yeah, it's both external, it's ineffective, but it's a relation, right? Like this is ineffective.
If it's external, it's not composition, and if it's ineffective, it's not a cause. We were discussing last time with Dennis the possibility of there being, causal relations. It doesn't seem to fit. Like it can't be really a cause, like a causal relationship between one thing and another, right?
No, cause
Yeah, yeah.
cause is
Well, you have-
composition.
Cause is composition.
Yeah, but like this is my point. Like this is effective,
Really is, but yeah, this is kind of tricky.
but in Badiou's crazy term, I mean, from what we've been seeing, you can find nice readings of causal models based on.
Yeah, you can
Composition.
find readings of causal model in composition, but I'm not sure every cause will be a composition. Just
No,
that.
not even for Badiou.
Yeah.
But I mean, that modifications can come in different ways, right? But yeah, Dennis
Yeah, of
did
course,
a nice
yeah.
drawing, so let's.
Yeah, what I
I'm just
think,
asking,
maybe
where does this fall?
maybe cause will be in the change chapter, because it's a very special kind of relationship that will change something, that will produce something. So it can't be a relation. So the tricky thing is that you have to isolate a concept of relation that is at work here, almost by negation of what is in the other chapters. So it's a very restricted sense of relation, it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dennis is doing something good here because, for example, clearly the light of the sun actually gets into the composition of the flower.
Yeah.
There is a mereological participation to be Platonic. There is a participation of the sun in the flower, as Wallace Stevens would put it, right? But the flower and the sun are one.
Yeah.
But there's also for the ephebe, who is not well acquainted with the supreme fiction, he thinks these two things are externally related. That's like, you know, they're not like, you're talking about them as separate. Like you can, for example, make a poetic metaphor where, you know, you're far away from the sun and something like this. Like you're,
yeah, considered as two objects with a distance. It's like there's no real relation.
yeah.
If you didn't know about photosynthesis, if you didn't understand photosynthesis, then your conception of the relation here would be qualitatively different. So it's like the amount of I mean, it's like what you said. There's types of relations, and they're informed by the framework in which you're working with, right? If you're working in a scientific, a biological framework, then you can see these two objects in a certain relation that is compositional. They interact. Or in other words, it's not a two closed systems.
Yeah, but I think that that's a good point. Like, for example, there is a sort of, I would even say that this Hegelian sort of approach, you get this sort of, you know, understanding where you take things that's externally related and you have reason where these things are internally related. But for Badiou, you get more than that. For example, you could even distinguish between, let's say, the naive statement, there is a flower and there is the sun. There is a sort of, let's say, not scientific statement, but a sort of more rigorous or strict statement that the sun participates in the flower, right? But you can also make an operation that actually changes the value of the relation between flowers and the sun, for example, a poetic experiment or something like that, right? So that you can get further into this with modifications and the theory of change later on. But what I think we can get is like, this here is always effective, right? It can be effective in terms of composition, causality, information, consolidation, or whatever you want. This is effective. And but this is effective and is connective. This is ineffective and is also connective. And this here is not connected. You can get this as well. Like you can get stuff that is simply not related. I mean, even though it seems like, you know, because this here, I mean, this is, I think that what we're seeing is that this is not simply the remainder. Everything that is not effective is a relation. No, because relations have a constraint. They're connected. Like if you get like one thing like this, then this will have a certain relation with this other thing. Like there are a bunch of stuff that follows from it, right? It's not the loosening of constraints. It's very much a consistent field as well, right? Like the field of ineffective relations, perhaps. So my question is, there are these constraints here, and which are these external ones, and we know of the internal ones. But there seems to me to be there like this gray area where not every sort of connection I can with my head posit in the world is in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So there are some conditions for connections to be relations. So for example, I'm asking if we couldn't say, for example, me as a person have a connection to friends. Again, my connection is dropping.
Yeah, now it's back, I think.
Oh fuck. But I'm just, you see my point, here? Like, yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
But you see my point, like, I feel like, let me erase this step, sorry.
Okay, everybody's.
I don't think people left. Everyone's
okay.
Here.
Yeah, it's just all of your faces disappeared on my screen. Yeah. So you were saying that, that we can have ineffective but connected relations. So you can have the operations of transitivity, where even though it's ineffective, let's say, I don't know, I'm watching something on TV, you know, like I'm not really affecting what's happening,
mm-hmm.
right? but because I'm watching it, wouldn't like commodity exchange kind of fit here? Like, I mean, I guess that would be a debate of whether exchange affects the objects, but it certainly doesn't affect the use value of an object, right? If I whether I buy something, so I go somewhere and I buy like a hot dog, you know.
That's an amazing hot dog.
Yeah.
With ketchup.
You know, so it has some ketchup on it, and I bought it from this guy. He has the hot dog. I have money, so right. So I give him the money. He gives me the hot dog. In that relation, it's ineffective in the sense that we didn't change the constitution of either thing. But when I eat the hot dog, right? That's a composition thing, right? That's like the sun and the flower, right? So here's composition, and then this would be the relation.
So circulation and production.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, the production would be this guy making the hot dog, right?
Yeah, sorry, circulation and consumption. Right?
Yeah, circulation, consumption, yeah. Yeah.
But no, yeah, that makes sense to me. But what I wanted to suggest is that one thing that this chapter might be also suggesting is that not all connections are logically consistent, right? In this sense of not consistent, but they're not all connections are relations, even though both are ineffective. My relation to friends it's not composing or changing friends. In the same way that Brazil's relation to France is not changing the being of France or not composing that being, but Brazil's relation to France is a relation because it is universally exposed. Whereas I just have a connection in that weaker sense. You see my point? Like I'm trying to distinguish between two forms of ineffectivity. One that is actually, let's say, has the property of being universally exposed because it integrates this network of relations between objects, and another one which is just, let's say, accidental, right?
But you know, at the end, every relation for Badiou is universally exposed. So even your relation to France is universally exposed.
Yeah, that's a.
But yeah, but what does that mean exactly? I mean, does it mean that anything I think in terms of connections is a relation, and because it's a relation,
no, connection like. I understand connection to be what Dennis was discussing earlier on. There are certain morphism among objects that are connections or morphism between objects, but Badiou does not call them relation. So relation for him is very restrictive, exclusive club.
But I divided between three terms. I'm asking.
Right. So those are connections. Those are
no. Those are what we're calling composition, like very rich ways in which connections are intrinsic.
Well, I understand. Composition is something that is changing the composition of the object itself, like it affects the atomic logic of the object.
But for example, it can be very, very weak. Like I'm localized by France as a foreigner, right? Me as a foreigner, I have a relation to France. That is not a relation. It's actually I compose France because I can be as an atom localized by France as having a very, very, very weak degree of existence. I'm not even in the territory, right?
Oh, you're back to the France example?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think, but it has to do with the scale in which you're
exactly. That's where I wanted to get. Exactly, I wanted to show that it seems to me that let's say the strata, the level at which relations are at which relations exist, right, is actually very sensitive to the composition of objects. So not all objects can relate, right? The same way that citizens in Quebec can relate to the incident and to the administration, but citizens in Quebec can't
Why?
really
Yeah, like a mosquito couldn't relate to the
exactly.
Okai
It
incident,
can compose. It might compose it with a very weak degree of existence, or it might. I mean, I can postulate that there is a connection. So I'm trying to call connections, let's say, things that are relations that are also ineffective, but they're actually lost in between the scale of objects, right? That's why I chose a nation and a person.
I think it's
Almost
wonderful
losing your
that
voice
when you talk about connections, that's when your connection drops. And we're unable to understand.
Yeah, we're
Fuck.
almost losing your voice. I mean, we lost like one whole sentence there. I mean,
Yeah, like
sound
I
It was the
keep
best sentence.
hearing. I understand what you're saying about composition. I understand what you're saying about relations in general. But every time you talk about connections, I feel like it's
The connection is lost.
yeah, the connection is
Fucking
lost.
hell, man. This is crazy. Can you guys hear me
You're
now?
saying, yeah, now it's back because you're not talking about the connections.
Okay, there is. Let me put it this way. There is this one thing I would like to define, and I'm not sure if I'm forcing this into Badiou's reading or if you can derive it from it. I'm not gonna say what it is, but this thing, this linkage. I'm trying to see if we don't have the means now to discern a form of linkage between objects that, due to the mismatch between object compositions, for example, a mosquito and the country of France, due to the mismatch, not only is there no effectivity in terms of composition, but there's also no relation. So I'm calling it something else. Just so we can talk about the conditions under which objects can be universally exposed in a relation. Right? So we get to talk about, sorry, is it cutting or is it okay?
No, well, can you repeat? No effect. Yeah, it didn't cut, but I just forgot. No effectivity and no. What's the other one?
No connection at all.
No connection. Okay.
Right. So,
yeah.
I mean, I might me, Gabriel, talking about a mosquito and France, I can like impose some relation in my head, but it's not in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm trying to find a way to distinguish that, so that it might be clear the difference between this linkage that I'm postulating, which has no effectivity and no connection, from the linkage that is a relation, because it has no effectivity, but it has connection, meaning it is positively constrained. It is in the world. If France ceases to exist, it will not affect Brazil, but it will affect the relation between Brazil and other countries. So it will change the constraints of relation, right? Or if a revolution happens in France, so the object is changed, it will affect the relation. So
yeah.
So it seems like there are conditions under which objects need to meet so that their connections can be universally exposed under a constrained consistency, you know? I mean, that would be a way to talk about layers in the world, layers where some homogeneity was acquired. It's no longer, let's say, a matter of creative differentiation, compositionality or anything. It's like a stable layer, like a metastability, right? Which is the idea of externality, like some sort of interiority has been established. So now you can talk about interiors relating. So there are conditions for that, which is something in between objects and relations. So certain objects seem to be universally exposed in their relations in a world, but others don't really connect. I don't know. I'm trying to understand this, if this makes sense.
So yeah, I think it makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I think it is actually, you can relate that to the last bits of the chapter, I think, which is the inexistent, right? Because which I can parse like that in the multiples there is a bit of them that is inexistent in a certain world, which is the condition for them to be existent in another world, in a sense. I don't remember the exact formulation, but it's something like that. Like I'm reminded here, strangely, by a solution to the Fermi paradox. Don't know if you're familiar with this idea that why aren't we being visited by alien civilizations and all of that? And there's this whole idea of the great filter. It is because there is a technological filter. So whenever a civilization gets advanced enough to visit another galaxy, they self-destruct, so they can't be here. There are several different solutions to that. But one of my favorite is because our relationship to these aliens that might be here already is the same relationship that a colony of ants have to the road that is being built on the side. Like they can't really see the road. They can't really understand the road. The road does not exist for them. There are multiples, like there is paint. There is, what's the name? Asphalt. Don't remember the name.
Asphalt, yeah.
Asphalt, yeah. There's asphalt. There's matter in a sense. There's stuff going on, but there's no road being built. So because this aspect of the multiple does not exist for them in their world. It's completely irrelevant. So this I think this is kind of weird to think that maybe we are already being visited by aliens, but we can't really synthesize this as the things they are, because we don't have access to this part of the multiple. This part of the multiple is inexistent for us, and this can be parsed in the sense that Gabriel is saying, like different strata that can relate. Of course, the example I'm giving is rather extreme because you can't even detect the other stratum, right? You can't even detect it. So it's a kind of an extreme example, but nevertheless, I think it makes a lot of sense with this last bit of the chapter, which I find it's really important. The idea of the inexistent.
Yeah, but I would say the inexistent will mediate between worlds, right? Which I think is really good with your example. But like, my point is the following. Dennis made a clear example that I thought it was really good to show that the limit of support is participation. Like the limit of supporting is when everything that is in the thing being supported is also in you, right? So you're part of it.
Yeah.
But there is also the weaker limit of support, because if I talk to somebody and they tell me I'm a leftist, and I say, what do you do with regards to the left? And you say, nothing. That's just what I am. Then you can say that's, let's say, the lowest bound, right? Like you're not even liking a post, like you're not doing anything, like you're not even talking about it. It's just nothing.
You're self-declaring you're declaring yourself.
If that, perhaps, right? Because if you ask something, so I mean that's not support. I mean, I just want to show that, let's say, to support the Mohawks means to adopt certain conditions. It's not simply in the air, what we're calling a relation here. It still is a connection of some sort, even if it's weak and ineffective. So there is, let's say, the highest limit of this, which is to go to participation, but there is the lowest limit, which is not only ineffective, but ultimately not a relation. So you need to accept some constraints, which are ultimately the constraints of the universal exposition, so that this can be called a support, and to be opposed to vituperation, right? So this lower bound, it's interesting to me because it suggests that you cannot, I mean, Althusser had this statement, I loved it. I always thought it was one of his best one-liners, that you cannot see everything from everywhere. Which was his statement to say, you need to take sides in class struggle to see the totality. You cannot see the totality without taking sides in politics. But I think that it's not incompatible with what Badiou is saying, because
from where is that phrase?
From Freud and Marx, the text he wrote.
Freud and Marx, okay, that's interesting.
I really love this text. And
What text is this?
Freud and Marx.
Mhm. Oh, from Althusser.
Yeah. But I don't think that this is, I mean, I don't think that what Badiou is saying is that any two connections you want to come up with between objects is a relation. I mean, sure, there are infinite possible connections, but they're not all happening at the same time. So that's why I wanted to distinguish between, let's say, the sort of virtuality of connectability between things and say that it's all there all the time. My relation to the left is already in the world, like my kind of invisible support. I don't think that's what he's saying. Like, he's saying given that a relation exists, it will be universally exposed. But that doesn't mean that all relations exist, right? All possible relations exist. So the move from all possible relations to those that exist, there is a small gap, and that gap needs to respect the composition of objects. So if you have no online presence in the least, and if you don't talk to anyone about the left, so in no way you enter the circuit of vituperation and support for the Oka incident, there is no relation. You see my point? Like, so you need to there is some adequacy to this conservative stability of relations that you need to. So in a certain sense, you can imagine that me, not as a foreign, but as my opinions about France, don't really have any relation to France. Now, if I write a letter for the French government, or if I join some refugee boat, I adequated myself to something which itself then has a relation to France, and then enters into the circuit of different oppositions and exponents that you can factor through all this stuff, right? This system of constraints.
Yeah, I like this. So you're saying there's a kind of a materialist condition, and that's actually the whole point, right? This is a thesis on materialism.
Yeah, I think we can read the thesis both ways, right? Not only is he saying not all relations are universally exposed, but those stuff which is not universally exposed is not a relation.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, it's interesting to me because not only do we get the positive theory with the object of how composition works, localization, and things like this, how this larger objects can be composed out of small objects and so on, but you also get a theory of, let's say, how do you enter the frequency of the stability of objects, right? You're not always at the measure of all objects. You might have less than a relation with an object, right? For example, you can compose something that itself has a relation. Like me as a Brazilian citizen, I'm part of Brazil. Brazil has a relation to France. Therefore, there is a relation to France that I'm part of, sure. But that doesn't mean that my possible relation to France is included, right? Or is existent. Yeah, I'm not sure if you see my point.
Yeah, I was thinking of the example of like relation to like state, citizen, and then like you would have so somewhere over here you would have like refugee, right? So clearly there is some relation, but it's very far away.
Mm-hmm.
And then the limit would be something isomorphic to a citizen, right? But I mean, what I'm just saying here that you have a range of possible relations from, let's say, refugee at the minimum, all the way to, you know, something that's basically another citizen, right? Like, so this is kind of like our range of possible, but there's nothing, let's say, there's some conditions just to even qualify to be somewhere on this scale, right? Yeah, but I mean, it is, and then over here it is the inexistent, right? The inexistent is, on this side of the scale, right? Here is the most, let's say it's maximal with regard to this relation.
Yeah, it's a good example. For example, people with undocumented workers in a country, their relation to the country is in formal democratic terms is very weak. Only insofar as they can become voters can they then relate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can be you can have, say, you compose the country as a worker there, you're part of France, right? But you don't, let's say, meet the formal criteria to relate to it, like to be universally exposed in this network of people who are for or against the candidate and things like this.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
What I'm trying to suggest, like but I'm not sure if this is a personal interest that I'm projecting too much into the text, or if this is precisely the part of the text where this gets some credence.
Yeah, I was going to, because for me, what Badiou is trying to do, which is still, I haven't read the rest of the text, at least to this level of exposition, is very, not very, but it's rather clear. I mean, he's defining a certain, in lack of better terms, morphisms between objects to be relations. And he's saying that the hypothesis of, not hypothesis, but the fact that he has proven that every world is infinite of inaccessible kind basically proves that if you have a relation of those conditions, the relation has to be universal. And the opposite of this is that if a relation is not universal, then it's not a relation. Which basically leads me to the question that what is the motivation of this conversation? Because it is rather clear from Badiou's text that objects can be connected in various different ways to each other, but not those connections are considered relation.
Yeah. But I think the key here is that the universal exposure has these three vertices, right?
Yes.
But this fourth vertex here, and actually there's a bunch of them, right? There's a bunch of
unlimited of them.
Unlimited of them until it reaches the limit, right?
Then it is one.
Then it is, then we have a global exposure. So yes, it's true. Every relation is globally exposed. So for any relation, we can find a vertex. Limit. We can find a limit that has these three corners, right? But the question is these other ones, right? These green ones, they move towards the inexistent in a way. They move towards a certain disappearing or vanishing limit. It's like a reverse limit.
Because
it goes towards nothing.
We shouldn't forget that the whole point of this chapter is to say relations appear. Relations between objects in a world are in a world. That's the crazy thesis. Yeah. Relations appear. They exist. Does that mean that any connection that I can come up with appears in a world? No, that doesn't mean that. That's my point.
That is true. That is what he emphasizes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a materialist thesis. So relations are connections of a certain kind where this commutative triangle here can be formed. Like they are exposed by this other object, right? So you need to, let's say, to some things need to qualify to appear so that the relations appear.
Yeah.
So because that's not guaranteed by the very fact of connectability, let's say, right?
It is like sort of the first postulate of materialism that every atomic component is supported by a real atom. Mm-hmm. In this case, he says every relation that is worthy of the name relation in a world is supported by a limit.
Which is
Yeah.
also composed, it has a set, right? There's a
Mhm.
multiple that stands for this. And which I didn't cover, but it's the multiple consisting of pairs, where this is like this, right? I don't know if that, right? A row of A. So this is this is a multiple of A, elements A belonging to A. This is multiples B belonging to B, and then so this would be citizen would be A, all multiples A B. Actually, yeah, well, it would be a subset of this actually, technically, but yeah. But what you're saying is that there is a set that supports the relation.
Yeah, no,
which
I
is
think
not it's isomorphic to this one, but it's not the same as this one. Right? This A row of A is not the same as the original A here. And this is actually to be found in his proof of the universal exposure in the appendix.
Because this is my point, like the logical completeness is it implies that everything that appears as a relation consists together, right? That's why you need to show the uniqueness of the exponent, because it cannot be anything, that it's constrained by the previous relations, right? You were establishing. So we're trying to show that for relations to appear, it's not only that there is a one connection, like this third term of the citizen, but that this actually constrains the limit, constrains a bunch of stuff. It has a logical constraint on it. But not all connections will respect that. And the connections that don't respect that, they don't appear as relations. Right? Those relations are not in the world. You can still, and we can talk about them, but that doesn't mean that they're there.
Actually, I don't think your video is going to affect your audio.
Yeah, but I mean, you're not gaining much by my pretty. It's terrible either way. That's what you mean.
No, it's better to see you. Some of us can read lips.
But I know that this is stretching in the sense that I'm personally interested in this problem. Like I'm personally interested in what is the philosophical and the formal background to be able to state things of the form. Political organizations participate more in the political world than individuals. Individuals might compose political organizations, but they are, let's say, at the level of the thing. So I'm interested in how this, let's say, different scales consist together with different objects, but not all objects consist with all scales.
So there is a problem of scale here. I guess you said it earlier, or Dennis said it.
Yeah, and I mean, it is here, and I think that he's not interested in this problem, but I think that the formal machinery is perfectly supports that, and I find that absolutely incredible, because there is absolutely no philosophy done on this ever. So this is really crazy. But it's interesting to see that this double condition of the composition of objects, which gives us the localizational structure, and let's say giving us the bottom-up approach, and then the universal exposition of the global consistency of the world, giving the top-down, you get a sort of feeling for a strata where relations consist. Below that, you get, let's say, uneven connections between people and capital. There's no connection between people. Like that doesn't exist in a world, a relation between a person and capital. Sure, you might compose a productive unit, you might, as a consumer, blah, 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 but the relation with capital as such is not in a world, it's not materially in the world. So you can start talking about, let's say, the sort of conditions for you to be made of the same stuff as the thing you want to intervene upon. Right? And in that sort of scalar talk of how do you get to the level of something? How do you consist as something else consists, right? And I feel like it's pretty much something that it is at this level. Like suddenly we're talking about these things as they are already constituted, externally commensurable, right?
Yeah, this is a misspelled nation.
Nation.
Right. So we have these three, each having a certain relation. Although they're kind of like bijective, or not bijective, but they're relations that maybe go both ways here. And we're saying that we're trying to make something in the measure of these relations.
Yeah.
Right. So like, what would be the universal exposure of this relation, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For example, until today, most socialists who wanted to intervene thought that the only form commensurate with that sort of level was the state. The state is at the level of nations and capital, right? It's a form that gives us the same, makes us commensurable with it, right?
So, yeah, I see. So actually, in that sense, each one of these serves as the universal of the other two, right?
Yeah, I think that's the whole Borromean thing. Remember, we were talking about like that whole Girard Borromean category, where you remove one and you expose the connection between the other two. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I'm not. I don't want to take too much kind of focus on this because I think that there are other more intrinsic discussions, but I find it very profound how this sort of concern with the way Badiou constructs the move from like the whole apparatus, in fact, the whole scaffolding of worlds is done in such a way that I think you can almost use a sort of sound metaphor, like, or a frequency metaphor, you know, like certain things vibrate at a certain frequency. You don't get to kind of interact with an object if you don't tune in to a certain frequency, you know. That's a frequency where you make some glass vibrate. At lower frequencies, you don't do that, you know. So there is a certain, you can talk about this without assuming any fundamental building block. So the atomic logic didn't define bottom and top of objects. These are loose. But once you define what is an atom, it kind of organizes a certain form of localization and compatibility, right? And it defines what sort of extrinsic relations are possible. But I find that you can start talking about a very materialist theory of participation, right? That's why people become citizens, to participate in the state, because that form, the citizen, is compatible with the state. Like in the sense of you can relate to the state, you can compose the state, but other atoms don't, right? So there is a general theory of what it means to be externally commensurate with something, to participate in something, but also to have no bearing on it. Like virtually you can talk about it. And I would say that this also kind of allows us to talk about the sort of very kind of impotent virtuality of, you know, political, philosophical language. Like you imagine all these connections, but they have absolutely no material bearing in that world. So I find that useful, but.
Yeah, I mean, like someone just said, it's an application of the thesis of materialism to relations.
Yeah.
In a way, it's like.
Though, I mean, it's something interesting to consider that the first thesis was a postulate right? And the second thesis is a theorem,
Yeah.
right? He gives the
Interesting, yeah.
proof of the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he calls it a thesis, but yeah, thesis and a postulate seems a bit different to me.
Yeah, he has a proof for that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's in
I wrote it
appendix.
here, but I mean, we don't need to go through it, but it's pretty straightforward with everything we've been saying. Right, lemma 4 actually uses the postulate
Yeah.
in the proof. So the first thesis is used as lemma 4 of the.
Well, how does it play into it? Like, how does because that gives a sort of set theoretical conditioning for the logical completeness, right?
Yeah,
How does it
because so you need the set to say that, because the relation itself is defined as a pair of elements, one element from A and one element from B. I think that's lemma 2. So lemma 1 means we can create pairs, right?
Mm-hmm.
For any two multiples A and B, there exists A times B.
Yeah, and,
So
and
that's,
that actually follows from the the proof of the inaccessibility kind of already plays with lemma A, right? If you can
Yeah.
disseminate and if you can totalize, you already kind of get ordered pairs, right? You get products.
Yeah, exactly, because it's actually the union of A and the power set of A. Because this means I can make the following, I think. It's where A and B belong to A.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually not a pair. This is not the same as A times A. This is A times the power set of A, where I can choose one element from A and then another element from A, which is ordered. This is the same as saying the order matters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a technical thing because normally sets, in a set, the order doesn't matter, right? Normally A comma B is equal to B comma A. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
In set theory, the order you write it. So you need this union of the power set to create ordered pairs. So that's what lemma 1 gives us. Then lemma 2 gives us the functional interpretation. So it says for any two objects, we can create a multiple, which is this pair. Right, lemma 2 kind of follows from lemma 1. Right now, given by the relation rho, we can form the ordered pair A, B.
Given that we have the object, given that we have A and we have the ordered pair, we can come up with the function that takes us from that A to the pair, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a multiple. Right, the multiple, right, A times B, it's a subset.
Yeah.
Relation between A, B, and then this contains ordered pairs A, B, which is, it's a multiple that actually exists.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, actually the difference is, okay, we know this multiple f of rho exists, but lemma 4 will say that the multiple and V, which is another identity relation, exists.
It's nu, not V.
Oh, okay. Nu, okay. Yeah, nu exists. It has I mean, this pair exists. This is an object. So between lemma 2 and lemma 4, we actually prove that this is an object. It's a sheaf. Yeah, we have another sheaf that is the kind of the combination that stands for the relation. Yeah, lemma 3 is just the definition of this new.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it takes two elements from A and B, and another two elements from A and B, and finds it constrains the identity by saying you have to take the lesser of the two. Right. So if you think about it, A and B have their own measuring sticks, right? They have their own identity functions. The way that this composite identity behaves is it takes the lesser of the two. Okay, and then then just say that this object, every atom of this object is real, and then this is an exponent.
Yeah.
So it is the limit. Yeah. So it is proving in a set theoretical way that this thing here is a limit of this here.
No matter what A and B are.
Yeah, no matter what A and B are, if you make the set of elements of ordered pairs, you're creating the limit. And in reality, every function, like if not even speaking in category theory terms, every function can be written as that set of ordered pairs, right? In a purely set theoretical, like if you want to derive the notion of a function, it's just a set of ordered pairs. So it's again, Badiou's kind of mapping back to set theory by saying this. He's saying that we have a notion in ontology, we have a notion of relation. Right? You may think the relation is like this virtual thing in appearances, or like some kind of emergent phenomena of appearance.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, ontologically, it was always part of being. Right? It was always derived from being using the operations of the multiple.
Right, because it is another multiple itself.
Yeah, because it is another multiple itself. Yeah.
I'm really curious about the next section, like how we'll get to it, because it's weird how small a place in the chapter. I mean, I wonder why the inexistent. He only mentions the inexistent here to say, by the way, guys, none of this is changing the inexistence of objects, right? Like the inexistent is preserved. Relations don't, by preserving existence, they're also preserving inexistence, right?
Mm.
But he doesn't say anything more than that, I think. Like, it's like one page.
I felt that this was super important part of the book.
Yeah.
Existence. But yes, very, very brief. I think it's presupposing everything we've been saying, but it's not plainly said up until now.
Actually, I was a little bit confused about the whole treatment of inexistence in this chapter, because the definition of inexistence or something inexist in the previous chapter was a slightly different than this one. He was talking about inexistence in atomic logic as something whose degree of appearance is minimum. But in here, he's adding a condition and saying that every object has an inexistent because I mean, his sentence is a little bit weird to me, at least. Let me see if I can find it. He's saying,
yeah, he says there is, for every object, there's an atom, we verify, by virtue of the positive materialism, there exists an element which identifies this atom if, which atom? Yeah, the function.
no, he's saying on page 342, moreover, it's in the second paragraph. Moreover, it is possible to establish that the property of inexistence characterizes the element. We know proposition. This comes down to saying that no, this wasn't that.
Yeah, he says that I think the part that the first statement in this in the page is the weird one. For every object.
No, I found it. Sorry, it is worth. It's in the second paragraph, or the last paragraph on 342. It is worth dwelling on one last time, after its conceptual presentation, on the signification of this phantom-like element, the proper inexistent, which is that single atom of each object, of an object. Its existence is guaranteed in every object because the minimum mu exists in every transcendental, and so too does for every multiple A of the world ontologically conceived the real atom prescribed by theta sub A. Right? So, and he shows actually there could be other atoms of the object A that could inexist, but in the sentence right above that, one will simply say every relation is sorry, it says that they are transcendentally identical. What we have there is an atom, the same one which is prescribed by theta sub A. Therefore, our element A and theta sub A are transcendentally identical. So again, an atom, an atomic component is a multiple that can be composed of multiple atoms, right? Mm-hmm. That have minimal exposure, but they are all identical, something like that.
Yeah, I would say it's identity by negation, right? You cannot distinguish, so they are identical.
You cannot distinguish them, yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because remember, there's this idea from the previous chapter about the coherent projective representation. So you have the territory, right? Which is, the territory is like all the degrees that, whose envelope is some P, right? So like that can be like Q1, Q2, and so on. And then the projection of this is basically all the multiples that have that existence. So all the multiples such that existence of X is less than or equal to P. That's the coherent projective representation. So if we just take P to be nil, then that's this set here, right? Existence of all X's
equal mu,
yeah. Right, this being transcendental, this being A, and this being F, FA.
Mhm.
But why a discussion of inexistent in the relation chapter?
Yeah,
Because I think it's setting it up for the next part about change.
I think
understand. But
I think his point is simply that, I mean, he just ends the chapter by saying relations are not only conserving existence, but the inexistence of objects are conserved as well. Relations are not only increasing, not capable of transformation, but they're also incapable of undoing the inexistence, right?
yeah, that's I think is a very important.
So actually,
result.
the relation is not a condition on what's visible from the object. Is what's visible from the object in a world that is the condition for the relation.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, exactly.
Something like this.
What visible of the object is the condition for relation.
Yeah, because the relation is not a condition for this. Like the relation is not capable of altering what from the object is detectable in a specific world.
Yeah, your support for refugees don't make the refugees more apparent in the world.
Yeah, because they are both already inside the world. So you are not making the world by supporting the refugees. Something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I really think that there is a whole theory of impotent political action on this chapter.
Yeah.
Guys, I should get going like in 15. I still have a presentation to finish.
Okay, so are we still on for next Tuesday?
Yeah, next Tuesday we should begin the change chapter.
Yeah, that's my turn.
And it has to be 10 p.m. next Tuesday because we have the class, right, Gabriel?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Reza, since it's a lot to cover, I'm not sure how far you are with it. We can also make a very kind of, we can take a very small slice of the chapter if you want, like not to worry too much about it, you know?
No, I present as much as I get to present.
Great.
So I'm not
I really want us to get to page 361 where he says, guys, I finally solved the problem in being an event. Everyone was bothered with this, and he's like, okay, fine.
What's the section? Because I have the French version. So
it's called Logique du site vers la singularité.
Well, logique du site vers la singularité. Voilà.
Yeah, it's part 3 of the first.
So
la troisième partie du chapitre sur le changement.
And it's nice because every book has a self-critique. He's actually following Althusser with that. In logic, actually, I remember this. Being an event has a self-critique regarding theory of the subject in the notes. Logics of Worlds has a self-critique with regards to being an event, and Immanence of Truth has a self-critique with regards to Logics of Worlds.
So you're saying in page 361 of the book, page 361 is logic of the site towards singularity.
Yeah, where he talks about the self-belonging of the event. You know, there is this problem with a lot of people kind of hit him with this, like.
That's just end of the introduction, or sorry, section 1.
Yeah, it's like not even one page.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying I'm eager to talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. So we get to that for sure.
Great. Thank you.
381 here in the French version.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll see. I think I'll adopt the format you guys adopted. So it would be like a presentation format. I'm not going to read like a write-up.
Great.
Yeah, I really like the conversation this time. Is very.
Yeah, I learned a lot, man.
Yeah, it was great.
Man, can you the 7 sketches thing I knew of. This Mikawa thing is the one that the text you said you were gonna send us, right?
Yeah. Actually, I think that that text you told me about the Picadillo.
Yeah.
Picado guy. Yeah, his text is really good. I think that section on metric frames, it's actually clearer than some of these
stuff,
things.
okay.
Yeah, but I would definitely look at the quantile section in the 7 sketches. It's the quantile is basically, it's like a matrix that can have arbitrary values. It can have values from any category.
I see.
Yeah.
By the way, I think we should
from.
also praise Dennis' presentation for, I mean, what a tour de force, man, with the whole kind of survey, you know, of the mathematics and stuff. It was really, really cool. Also, I was thinking, man, we could think about this, like, we're gonna go through the change now, and then it's the theory of points. Mm-hmm. At some point there, we could think about a second interlude with all the stuff we've been researching on, you know, because it will start connecting more with our side research on experimentation and value theory, politics, and that sort of stuff. We could try to see if we cannot fit some mathematics of that part, you know, see if it's not compatible with our discussions here as well at some point in the future.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Oh, like we could even think about doing a political economic interlude, right?
Yes, I thought of that.
Yeah, that would be nice. And I mean, weaving some math in there as well, but
yeah, but perhaps with a different focus. Yeah, I like that idea. It's a good idea. Anyway,
so Dennis, this presentation and the one before it, can you load them into our site?
Yeah, they're there already. Even this one, I put them.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, it should be in the latest video with in the notes.
Yeah, relation slides. Perfect.
Great.
Okay, guys, take care.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Good to see you guys.
Bye.